Bert Kreischer is a stand-up comedian, presenter, podcaster and full-time mad bastard. He was discovered by Will Smith no less, had the option to his life bought by Oliver Stone, and was the inspiration behind Van Wilder. Remember that? Ryan Reynolds, gas. His two Netflix specials, The Machine and Secret Time, are streaming now, while when he spoke to us, he had literally just sold out 2 nights at Vicar Street, having never played Ireland before. So I'm going. I'm Mike Sheridan, and this is The Delve.
Not to by any means slander international comedy, but New York comedy was all based on surprise. It was all based on the setup punch, the joke. And what I was noticing was happening in England, it was a very much puns and play on words and like a misdirection, as opposed to like we were like, our thing then was like in your face. A little shock comedy, I think. And I think comedy's changed a lot. I think the advent of Netflix has kind of helped broaden comedy a tad bit, kind of make it a little different. I mean, it's changing so much now with like Hannah Gadsby's special and the way people are viewing comedy. But I still do it the same stupid way.
Yeah, but there's different ways of doing it. Obviously, you mentioned Gadsby there. She's kind of, I haven't watched the special yet.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, I'll shit on it just to shit on it because I'm a comic. But like, it's not bad. It's thought provoking. It definitely is. She'd have a really hard time following anyone at the Comedy Store, in my opinion, but I don't think that's what she does.
Yeah, it's a different way of doing things.
It's a different thing, yeah. And by the way, I'm totally cool with that. I want to see different people do. I don't want to see the same guy do the same fucking type of act that we've all been doing. You know, I don't want to see some guy doing a regurgitated act of Mitch Hedberg or Dave Attell. I want to see someone do something different and inventive. And she definitely did that, I'll tell you.
So you had a bit of success early on. You're only doing stand-up like a year and a half, and you were getting deals and stuff to. Maybe they were sitcoms, but development deals, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you kind of had to come back to stand up then and hone your act to where you are now.
Putting it. I got discovered really quick. Well, I got discovered before I even started stand up. I got discovered by Rolling Stone magazine. They call me the #1 party animal in the country. And then I got into stand up via that. A radio show in Tallahassee was like, "You want to do stand up? We'll give you a shot." And so they put up an open mic night with a bunch of regular comics and me, and I did well. I got offered my own morning show in Tallahassee, and then I decided I'm moving to New York. So I moved to New York, started working the door at a place called the Boston Comedy Club, and 6 months in, Will Smith discovered me. Got a development deal, got another development deal, got a TV show, got another TV show.
Just living the dream.
Well, you know what though? It's so funny. I was living the dream, and I remember at one point I was driving down the street. I was wearing a Sacramento Kings basketball jersey. It was the morning. I was driving to the set. It was winter in LA, which is amazing. It gets real windy, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. Windows down in a big, the dream truck you'd want to have. Listening to Ja Rule. I have more money than I'd ever thought I was going to have. And I remember just being like, so this is it, huh? I was like, I thought this would be like more, like I didn't really care about my job. Like it was a cool job, but it was like, interviewing celebrities, but not in like a podcast format like what I do now. It was more like in like a 2-minute snippet, like, hey, tell us about your product. Like I just felt empty. And I felt like I was chasing something that I wasn't gonna catch ever. And then I lost it all. I mean, just stopped working, didn't focus on stand-up, trying to book TV shows and movies, met my wife. And then I threw myself back into stand-up. I said if I got in this to be a stand-up. I didn't get in this to be famous at all. I just wanted to be a stand-up. And so I started working really hard on stand-up, met my wife, and then cut to like, a couple years later, we're about to have Georgia, my oldest. My business manager calls me and says, "You're broke, you have no money." And I spent the first year of Georgia's life on the road every weekend, featuring, hosting, headlining B clubs in like Amarillo, Sacramento. And I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. I remember being like, dude, I'm living it. I'm doing it.
What was it? Was it the performing that you missed, or just?
It's stand-up.
You'd never struggled. You'd never.
Yeah. Well, it was like I don't know. It's just all the other stuff felt like anyone could take it away from me at any time. It felt very vaporous, and.
It wasn't your thing. Somebody was giving it to you.
Yeah, and it wasn't my voice. And then when you get into stand-up and you're working and you're building your hour and you're doing great work and you're feeling confident about it and you're going up at the store or at the Improv in LA and you're destroying, you're having great. It just felt like, and I felt like I was on the right path. It's like I think a lot of times when you're lost, what's that? All that wandered aren't lost. Well, I was fucking wandering and I was lost, and I didn't know where I was going, and I was just spending money to spend money. I didn't really know. I didn't have any value of the dollar. And then when I lost everything and married my wife and started having kids, I was just on the right path. I was where I was wanting to go. It was fucking so great.
You guys kind of have this amazing, it seems like a kinship where everybody kind of has each other's backs. There's like you, Segura, Ari, Rogan, and there's a few other guys kind of in that circle, Bill Burr as well. Where everybody kind of, and even Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen now with Fighter and the Kid, where you guys all have your own shows.
Theo, all of us.
It's a beautiful thing to see. Everybody kind of supports each other, and you'll have each other on each other's shows all the time.
Yeah, well, I think it's a weird time in comedy in that. We use the term "put them over." It's a wrestling term. It's, I guess, theoretically, if a big wrestler can put a smaller wrestler over by letting him body slam him. I don't really know anything about wrestling, but it's a term, putting him over. And I think very quickly we realized the old energy of LA, which was competitive and combative and accusatory, wasn't working for us. And Joe stood up for all of us when he called out Carlos. He said, "No, there's no stealing. It was bullshit." And Joe got punished for it. And when he started his podcast, you got to credit a lot of this to Joe, is he just welcomed funny people on. He wanted funny people on his show, and he wanted to laugh and get high and giggle. And in doing that, Joe, I think, grew. He looked like he was looking very magnanimous, I guess. It's like by having all these great people on, it was everyone's like, "Oh, Joe's podcast is great. He's out of these great comics and these fighters and bow hunters." And he was very much like, it wasn't like he was like, "I got my show, guys, you're my team." He was like, "No, start your own show, start your own team, build your own product, start your own podcast." If it wasn't for Joe and Tom and Joey and Ari, I would not have a podcast. And it was just, and I think that camaraderie, and you got to credit it to Joe, just spilled over to all of us, and all of us thought we work so much better when we work together, and we build each other. It's like I have a cooking show, and I'm blown away by the guests I can get, but more importantly, it's great when you have like Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen or D'Elia and Bobby Lee on, and they build my cook. It's crazy because it's not how stand-up used to work, but it's this big, great, fun community where we see each other every Tuesday, Wednesday night. We all party a little bit. We all get high. We all giggle. No one's trying to sabotage anyone's set. Everyone's like giving them angles on, like Neil Brennan calls me up and he's like, "Dude, the joke you did last night, fucking amazing. I got 2 tags for you." I mean, I'm getting chill bumps. Stand-up's the best place it's ever been in the United States by far.
Because we kind of hear the opposite, where comedians are super neurotic and they're not like they are on stage at all, where this is the complete opposite. This is guys supporting
You still
each
have
other
those guys, and they kind of
weed
weed themselves out of the business a little bit. There are shitty guys still, but they just don't, the shitty people kind of don't, They don't rise in a weird way, and not to say like in like a piggy's got the conch, what Lord of the Flies kind of way.
Yeah.
But we've had our crazy people that have been combative and
Maron's been super honest about that, hasn't he? About kind of where he was after he went on crazy binge with Kinnison and then kind of recovered for a few years.
Maron's changed so much. I mean, if you said 20 years ago to me, "Hey man, Maron wants to have you on his show," I'd be like, "I'm sorry, what? Marc Maron's gonna speak to me?" Like, that was who Marc was. He was like a bitter, angry, kind of venomous, like, the first time I met Maron, I had a hat on backwards, and he just did 20 minutes destroying me on why would you wear a hat backwards? Aren't you a man? Turn it around. And I was like, what? Who the fuck is this guy? And now it's like, we run into Marc. Dude, he's still got Marc. Don't think he doesn't have Marc in him still. There's a part of Marc that is so biting that he'll never lose that. But he text him and call him, and you see him at the airport and you bullshit with him, and he's really turned a corner too. But I think it's that same thing with podcasting. And Marc was a part of it, is that Marc realized in order for his business to grow, he needed to have comics on his podcast. That was his WTF's bread and butter in the early days. And so in order to do that, he had to get rid of a lot of beefs he had with people, and that was what made the show interesting.
And he's super honest about them as well.
Super fucking honest.
They go at that shit like kind of head on, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, like some and not to kind of talk about Maron too much, but I know you talked about Jon Stewart, how Jon Stewart just doesn't, Jon Stewart just doesn't want to be friends with him, he just doesn't want to do this show. But he's developed into this incredible interviewer. But you can tell
he's
when
an
he doesn't give a
amazing
shit.
interviewer.
Yeah.
I just did a show recently when my special was coming out. This is like, I mean, it's really hard for anyone to understand. But imagine working with someone who just doesn't, you cannot gel with no matter how much you want to. And then he turns into this really warming person. I go to his house. It's his new house. It's huge. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And I think I'm in the wrong fucking place. I'm like, this isn't the place I went before. And I'm like Googling, and he opens the door, and he's like, hey man, how you doing? Like, this is Mark. And you're like, what's up? And he's like, come on in. And you're like, dude, when'd you get this house? He goes, come on, I'll give you the tour. And he takes you around. He's eating an avocado. He's like, what the fuck happened to you? And then we go into his podcast, and we just giggle for like an hour. And Mark's notoriously not like a giggler, right? We just giggle for an hour, and he's like, that was fun, man. It was great seeing you. I'm glad everything's going great. And you're like, oh. And you're like, whew. But I think that Marc Maron's transformation speaks entirely to where comedy is in the States right now, and it's just very welcoming. I mean, I'm flying out after this, I go to New York for a week to do my cooking show, Something's Burning, and I'm like hitting everyone up like, hey, can I get you on? Can I get you on? And everyone's like, yeah. And they're like, yo, and sometimes you book one person and they just hit up the group in a group text, hey, I got this person, who should I pair them with? Because you want everyone to be great on it.
Yeah.
But comedy is fucking awesome.
We should mention as well, like you were saying you've been to Ireland before, but you've never played Ireland before.
I've never played Ireland.
So, and then you sell out two nights at Vicar Street.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is the podcast, and
a lot of it's
people
the
around the world just find you've just come from Copenhagen.
Media.
Yeah.
Social media has been big for me. The podcast, I think the podcast is an extension of my social media personally. I think everyone should have a podcast. I think if you are into what you're doing, if you're on social media trying to promote and sell tickets and put yourself out there, you should definitely have a podcast too.
You kind of started from a funny place as well, because the whole Van Wilder thing was like, it's a weird place to start when Oliver Stone options your life story.
Yeah. So
were you always going to go into stand-up? Were you always going to go into comedy, or at any point where you're like, I'm just going to have a kind of a civilian life and just, have a kind of, or was it always going to be, was it predestined that you'd be a performer? I never
thought I'd get into stand-up. I mean, everyone always told me I was the funniest person they met, that you should do stand-up. I never thought I'd get into stand-up. I just didn't think that was in the cards for me. I didn't really know what was happening with the Rolling Stone magazine when it started. I was like, I hope I get in the article. I didn't know it was going to be about me. And then when it came out, it really just changed my life. It changed my life globally, and I think doors opened for me. In my head, I realized, there's a world of opportunity out there. I remember Oprah called to have me on her show, but she wanted to have my parents on, and it was like just kind of shitty that they wanted to like go after my parents a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember going like, whoa, it was like a world of possibility. And then when Oliver Stone optioned the rights to my life, I was like, I had a couple of influential men in my life. My buddy Cameron Croy's dad, my Uncle Jerry, and my dad all told me, like, if you ever wanted a career in entertainment, now is when you need to go for it. And if you don't go for it, right now, be sure that you won't regret it, because you may regret this for the rest of your life. And when I heard that, I was like, all right, I need to go for it. And yeah, but I think, and I gotta say, not to say that like, there's no bravery in what I did. I mean, I always look at like Tommy and Ari, those two guys, even Joe. I mean, it's hard to look at Joe this way, but Tom and Ari are my contemporaries, like my age. It's easy for me to say, like, I look at them going, they didn't have any article, they didn't have any option, they just got up on stage for real. I had all this like momentum behind me to get on stage for the first time.
There's more pressure then though, right? Because people are like, so gregarious character, no?
No, I think it's so much easier when everyone's like, you should do this, as opposed to everyone's like, so you think you're funny? Like, who the hell ever told Ari Shaffir he was funny? Like, who the fuck ever told an Orthodox Jewish kid walking down the street, you know what, man, you should walk away from this religion and get into comedy? He had to think it on his own. That's brave, in my opinion.
Does everybody have an angle, do you think?
What do you mean?
Does everybody have something funny about them, or something funny that they can explore?
Oh, I think so, yeah. The hardest part about stand-up isn't, I think everyone's funny. I think so many people will run into, I go, you should do stand-up. The hardest part is translating that on stage, is being able to, everyone goes, man, if you could just get the room going, I'm funny around my friends. The hardest part is getting that person that's funny around their friends and making it the exact same thing that's on stage. Because so often you just do like a cheat code and you do something that gets laughs, but it's not your personality, it's not your voice. And then once you get it, finding your voice is the hardest part. It's the hardest part. Anyone can do stand-up. I mean, anyone can get on stage and craft a joke. It's just math. It's just a magic trick, really. Or someone could write you a bunch of jokes, get on stage and tell laughs. But can you get on stage and get laughs and be yourself? Like, I mean, I've known Tom 15, 20 years almost, 15 years. He's just like, I'm thinking just now really finding his voice. I remember watching him struggle like a blind man trying to wipe his ass doing stand-up, and it was not his voice. His cadence was off, and he was telling jokes that, you know what I saw in the news? What the fuck? But yeah, it's finding your voice is the hard part.
So you kind of went viral with the machine as well. And I remember the first time I think I heard that, I think you told it on Rogan, on Joe Rogan's podcast. And is that then a thing that kind of follows you around a little bit? It's this amazing story for anybody that hasn't seen it live. It's on YouTube and it's over 20 million views on YouTube. Is that almost like a thing around your neck, or is that something that you're like, this is one of the reasons why I've gotten as popular as I've gotten? That whole story.
Oh yeah, it's not a thing around my neck. Dude, I'm so proud.
It's a great story.
I mean, first of all, I'm itching my nose. I'm not a cokehead. First of all, I worked really hard on that story. Like, I know that people may discount it, or for whatever reason. Oh, he tells it. But I worked really hard on it. It took me a long time to get that story to work. I mean, you gotta understand, like, that was like changing the entire way I did stand-up. The entire way I did stand-up was not even remotely to what I do now. Like, it was like this fake, like we were talking about finding your voice. It was this like mock Dave Attell, Dane Cook, high energy, fun boy act. And I met Rogan, I told him that story on the podcast. He goes, that's your act. You need to learn to tell that on stage. It took me 4 years of failing with that story. So the fact that it went viral, I'm like so proud. That's like the thing you worked hardest on works and people get it and they like it. Oh, I'm so proud. I will tell it the rest of my life. As long as people want to hear it, I'll tell it. I have no problem. As long as they let me tell an original hour of material up front, I'll tell whatever stories they want to hear.
Is that kind of like your encore?
Yeah.
People call, because I told a friend of mine I was interviewing you and you just went, the machine!
Yeah.
Straight away. It's almost like,
especially when you come over to Europe, they haven't seen it. I mean, no one's seen me tell it live here. And a lot of people brought their friends and they told their friends, hey, don't watch this. And I want you to see it live. He's going to tell it. And so, yeah, I have no problem with that story being like, if people go, he tells it, I have no problem. I'm very happy it went viral. If that is what if you had told me like 5 years ago, hey man, here's the deal, machine's gonna go viral, you're gonna make a great career out of it. You have to tell it for like 10 years at the end of every show. I'd be like, oh yeah, done. For me now to be like in the middle of that and go, well, I think I'm bigger. I do think I'm better. I have more stories. I think one of the jokes I'm telling tonight is actually probably the best thing I've ever written in my entire life. Without a doubt. I'm prouder of this one bit as equally as proud as I am the machine. But I'm really cool telling it. As long as I can write all new stuff up front, and that's the tough part, is like a lot of people saw Secret Time and they're like, hey, you're not gonna tell, when in doubt, spread them out. You're not gonna do the deodorant joke. And you're like, it's kind of the gig. It's like, I can't just do the same hour. I want you guys to, I want to write. I'm gonna get bored with this if I can't write. But yeah, I have no problem. I'm very proud of that, and I'm glad anyone calls me the machine. Whenever I hear anyone yell the machine, it makes me smile. Some boys did it at my daughter's school the other day. These little 8th graders just looking at me and they're like, no way, there's no way. I can hear them, there's no way. And then one goes, the machine! And I turn around and he goes, it's him! Isla's dad's the machine! And then you can see it in their head. Wait, that's oh my God, of course it's Isla, because I talk about Isla in my act. But yeah, I have no problem with it.
And does it mean more when people connect with you over that? Like, you're recognized for something that you created, for something that's you. There's an authenticity to it, as opposed, I mean, the travel show is obviously great as well, but you're hosting a thing, you're presenting a thing, it's a kind of a version of you.
Yeah.
So when you get recognized and have that connection with people, it must mean more when it's something you've come up with, something you've created.
It means a great deal. Being known for your stand-up is such a great warm blanket to have in this life. I remember one time we took my kids to London I had a friend there who was shooting a movie, and we flew out to London. We stayed at their place, and then we were driving up to go to Shakespeare's house or whatever, Avalon or something. I don't know, Avon. I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but we had a Sprinter van and a driver, and we get out at this little pub to have lunch, and my wife just grabbed me. She goes, "Just think about this for a second. You laying in bed talking to yourself and writing jokes and telling stories, and you being yourself got us here to pay for all this shit." And I was like overwhelmed. I was like, because I'm annoying to be around. Like, I'll just be like this.
Do bits in your head.
And my daughters would be like, "Hey, stop." And I go, "I can't." My brain, at 25 years old, my brain switched over to stand-up. It's where I live. That is my happy spot, is to write jokes all fucking day long. I wrote a joke today about, we do a drink in the States called an Irish car bomb. And then I was like, "Do you guys have one called a U.S. school shooter? Like, is that a drink here?" And then I go, "It's not gonna fit my act, but it's a joke." And we bounce it around the car. Yeah, but it means a lot to be known for your stand-up, as opposed to just being like, "Hey, trip flip guy, take me on a vacation," and you're like, "Oh, okay."
It's funny because like in Irish crowds almost like being offended. And they will mock people. Like Bill Burr mentioned on stage 9/11 and people cheered. I thought that was messed up. You know, like it's this weird kind of paradox where they'll laugh at the kind of the worst stuff possible. Or Ricky Gervais, I went to see Ricky Gervais, and he's talking about terrorism, and he's like, "At least you guys used to call for us for a bomb scare," and the crowd all pissed themselves, and he was like, "Oh fuck, that was." Yeah. So the crowd obviously has to be part of it as well, and when they know your material, it's just an easier thing. But you've got an amazing relationship with your wife that we're all kind of semi-privy to in the podcast. How did it come about that she became involved in the show?
She really couldn't give two fucks for anything in my career for the longest time. Like, she just was like, eh. Like, she didn't like me working at Travel Channel. She didn't want me to take the job. I took the job because I knew we needed a house, and the market was down, housing crisis was going on. It was the best thing I ever did, was taking that job. But my wife wasn't a fan of the job. And then
You're on the road a lot, is that why? You're away a lot as well?
I was gone a lot, I was away from the girls, and she was just like, "Just get back into stand-up, you're not happy." And then when I kind of doubled down on the podcast and focused on the podcast, it started getting monetized. This is what's interesting about my wife. As soon as it got monetized, she realized we were creating our own pirate ship. And she was like, I remember her just being like, we did 2 reads one time, and they were like $5,000 each. And I did them, and it was a pain in my ass, and I had to edit them and plug them in and edit, and it took me like an hour to get it all done. And I got done, and I came in, and she was smiling. She had a glass of wine open, and she goes, "Did you post the podcast?" I said, "Yeah, I just posted it." She goes, "You just made $10,000. And I was like, "Yeah, I know." She goes, No. That was what you were getting paid your first season of Bert the Conqueror. You just did that yourself. Like, you don't have a boss, and you just did it yourself." And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Honey, this is where you need to be." And then I have a hard time reading out loud. So I'd have her come into the podcast and help her do the reads with me. And we started doing the reads with me. She started loving the podcast. And then I'd bring in a guest, and she'd be like, "Hey, can I sit in on that interview?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And she's so much better of a listener than I am. I really just wait for my turn to talk a lot. And so, which isn't for the best, it doesn't make the best podcast host. But she started doing it. And then one day she was like, "I feel lost." I go, "Why don't you start your podcast?" She started her podcast. She's the happiest she's ever been. I mean, and that's why I say everyone should start a podcast. It really makes you feel fulfilled to put something out there, and get better at it and work at it. And she's happy. She's going over to Dr. Drew's today to do Dr. Drew's podcast.
That's
she's doing Christina Paszynski's tomorrow. She's like, and by the way, she has no interest in entertainment business. She just likes having a group of girls in the man cave and talking about something. You know, everyone likes to feel like they've been heard. And that's why I think podcasting is so cool, is you can be heard. People listen to you. Right now she is the happiest she's ever been.
Is podcasting in general, do you think, hitting its stride at the moment in the US?
I don't think we've even gotten the ice cone shavings off the iceberg yet. Because there are so many people that don't know anything about podcasts, and when they do, it's going to explode, and you'll see growth. I'll tell you right now. I'll call it right now. If you want to do it, I don't have the time frame to do it. Lifestyle podcasting is going to be fucking huge. When you think of DIY network, Travel Channel, cooking, food, they're gonna blow up. I mean, my cooking show is bigger than my podcast. And we haven't even released that as a cooking show podcast because it's just not there yet. It's not there. But when that is there, oh, say goodbye. Say goodbye. I'm telling you, I tried to pitch this travel channel for 5 years. 9 years I tried to pitch this. I want to do a travel podcast where I go, all right, here we go, the UK. And then we whittle down everywhere to go in the UK. And you've got 30-minute podcasts on the UK. And just all you have is a library of content. So if I go, I've never been to Bath. What's Bath? And you hit Bath and they're like, oh, Bath is a great town, kind of like Key West, kind of like Fire Island. Great, slow, beachy town. Wait, I want to go. That's actually the wrong town. I'm thinking of Brighton. But anyway, that's why maybe I shouldn't do this. But I think it's going to explode. I think things are going to, when you can get podcasts that talk about issues that mothers are going through, brand new mothers, about postpartum depression and autism and vaccines, but not that I'm connecting the two. But
everybody calm down.
Yeah. But when you find that, when those people find podcasting, and it's happening. Rogan's doing it, Serial's doing it, This American Life's doing it. People are finding it, but when they find it the way that I found it 9 years ago, where I was like, yo, I'm on a plane for 4 hours. I'm going to disappear. I'm going for a walk. I'm going to disappear. I'm getting on the treadmill. Then it's going to be fucking huge.
It used to be, I heard it in a book, I read it in a book. Now the kind of conversation starter for everybody is, I heard it on a podcast.
Dude, I heard it on a podcast. Half the information I ever tell anyone I heard on a podcast. Do you want to talk about oxidation levels in holding your breath? Because I just listened to a podcast about Gabby Reese and Laird Hamilton and how their brand new swim workout. I know everything. What about fat and coffee? It really helps. Dude, I know everything I know is from fucking podcasts. Intermittent fasting, I've been doing it the whole trip. Learned it on a podcast.
It helps if you have that audience, I suppose, as well, though, because how long did it take you to kind of find an audience? Because before you had a producer and stuff involved, you were doing a podcast for a long time.
I did a long time.
More for material then as well, to kind of talk to material? Or?
No, I didn't know what I was doing it for. I was just doing it. I knew that I liked podcasts, and I knew that I wanted to do one. I just didn't know what I was doing it for. I didn't know what I was doing it, why I was doing it, and then I started doing ones where we drink late at night, and they were fun as shit. And then I thought that was the angle, and then I got into a couple conversations where I was like, "Whoa, this is a great conversation." I did one with Rob Riggle, who didn't want to be there. You could tell he didn't want to be there. Like his body language was just like, "All right, let's do this." And then and then I did one, and I had a great conversation with him about the different men that we are. Because he was in the reserves, Marine reserves, and when 9/11 happened, he walked away from auditioning at SNL, a whole career that could have happened, and went and served his country. And I was like, oh, that's where we differ. Like, I definitely would have been like, yeah, that sucks for our country, but I'm gonna do me right now. And so, but I had a great conversation, and then I started going, oh, I get an opportunity to sit in my man cave with a really interesting person for over an hour, once a week, and just have a fascinating conversation. And so now I do it mostly for me to like keep me grounded, and I really love it. I was with Dane. I had a great podcast with Dane for like
That's a great
2 hours, and it was
really fascinating. It just felt like two friends talking.
Yeah. Oh, I've known Dane for 20 years, and so that's what I love about it. I love doing podcasts. I enjoy doing them. I think in hindsight, I've probably spoken more than I should have spoke in my life. Because there's thousands of hours of me talking, saying horrific shit sometimes because I'm drunk or high, and I'm just like, fuck it. The world needs this opinion right now.
Well, that's why people are like downloading your pod. That's why people are subscribing to your stuff, because they want to hear you talking.
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong there, really.
There's no right or wrong, but I wish I had said half the stuff I've said. But now I love it. I can't get enough of it. I get excited when I have a guest coming on. I'm like, ooh. Like, I never did any research. I just bring someone on and just start talking, and now I'm like,
I was going to say, you seem really well researched. You always seem to know a lot about the people you're talking to. Really?
I'm horrible at that. I brought a guy on my podcast one time, Justin Wren. And I knew that he was an MMA fighter. I knew his name was the Big Pygmy. I knew that he did all this work in Africa with the Pygmy tribes, getting them clean water or something like that. So I kind of knew. So I was like, oh, I'll listen to a podcast with him on it. And I went for a 5-mile walk, and I listened to the podcast. And I guess when I hit play, it just went to the next podcast. So I listened to a podcast, a 3-hour podcast of another total person.
Oh, shit.
And then when he sat down, I started asking him about his training for jiu-jitsu in Brazil. And he's like, I've never been to Brazil. I'm not that good at jiu-jitsu. And I was like, I'm a horrible at research.
Panic, and you're like,
oh yeah,
shit.
and I brought people in. I brought people in at times, and I was like, I'm a horrible interviewer. If I'm interested in the person and I know the person, I'm great.
Yeah.
But sometimes I suck.
But that's the difference, I think, between an interview and a conversation, right? So
that's what I try not to. I try to make it a genuine conversation
Yeah.
between me and another person.
But you're going to get more from somebody if they're comfortable and you're having a conversation with them.
What's up?
Do we hear a fan waving from the window there?
Yeah, I try to have a genuine conversation with someone and just be chill and talk and let us talk about anything. Like, you know, nothing's off limits, but I'm not there to grill them. I don't need to know about their divorce.
And once they figure that out, that you're not going to do a gotcha moment with them, then they relax. Yeah.
I think they relax and go, oh, we're just here to hang. My whole goal in my podcast is just to get me to giggle once.
Yeah.
If I can giggle, I'm good.
So I've done so many interviews over the years where sometimes it's a junket setup, you know, where it's like a kind of a conveyor belt, and it's so difficult to have an actual conversation, especially with a movie star. It's so difficult because anything they say, and you see that with Chris Pratt now, but I feel so bad for Chris Pratt because he's got this big, broad following, and if he talks about his hunting or if he talks about his faith, people just jump on him and shit on him, and you get why they feel so guarded, and that's kind of a shame because, you know, he obviously has got something to say, or he just can't be himself.
Yeah.
Him, kind of, not him specifically.
No, him specifically. Yeah. Because I mean, I know that I've followed what's going on with him. I was a big Chris Pratt fan. My daughters are big Guardians of the Galaxy
He's a great guy.
fan.
I've interviewed him a couple
I bet
times.
he is.
Yeah.
I love his ex-wife, Anna. And I bet he's an amazing dude. But he does get fucking tons of shit for. But it is weird. I don't know. It is weird to hear anyone in Hollywood talk about their faith. You're always like, really?
And it's not Scientology. Okay.
No, right.
That would have been more normal.
I know, right? Yeah. You're always like, oh, so you believe in Jesus? Shut the fuck up. In this town? Interesting. Yeah, he seems like a great guy. But it's the world's so screwed up. You can't be, I mean, we were driving through Ireland and I'm like, yeah, I was raised Irish Catholic. And they're like, wait, really? And I was like, yeah. Everyone has something. I mean, I'm not like the best at it, but I do it. I try to or whatever. But then you say that and immediately Ellen Page is like, so you don't support gay marriage? And you're like, oh, fuck. What are we at, Thanksgiving? Can we just be chill? Ellen Page is great in Umbrella Academy. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh,
I love
so
Juno. Juno's a great movie.
Yeah, Umbrella Academy is me and my daughter's favorite movie. Ellen Page would hate my guts. If she saw my act, she'd be like, thank God I'm a lesbian.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Where if you just aim for your audience, you just seem to get more and more popular and you get more and more broad. Whereas if you try and be broad, you're trying to appeal to everybody, people just kind of think you're mediocre.
I think your people like you to go, you know what, fuck you. I'll do me, you do you. I think, like, I know that there's people that I like Doug Stanhope. I like that he is always going to surprise me. Even when he surprises me in a horrific way, I still go, that's why I signed up for it.
He's got the darkest Robin Williams joke. I saw him here in Vicar Street. Oh, we just talked about how he got this inspiration, and I don't want to ruin his punch. I'm talking about how he inspired Robin Williams, and I'll leave it at that. It's fucking dark. I remember the whole, like I mentioned, the Irish crowds we're not easily offended at all, but people go, holy shit.
Yeah.
But that might have been a goal from him as well. He was talking about his performance in Louis. He did an episode of Louis.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
He played the suicidal comedian, yeah.
Played a suicidal comedian, and Robin Williams reached out and loved his performance.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, Stanhope's the best.
He is.
He really is the best.
He's been around for so long as well.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you still look up to in comedy? Obviously, I mean, you've got your peers, you've got your friends, your colleagues.
I look up to it. That's the wrong thing, or the thing about me that I wish I could change is I look up to everyone. Like, I mean, I even guys that have been doing it shorter than me, I look up to and I go like, God damn, they're good. Like, but that's the cool thing about comedy is you can appreciate someone's joke writing, someone's like ability to carry in, like Chris D'Elia. I mean, that guy's so impressive in the way that he can just take a little thing that he finds goofy and turn it into this huge viral moment that all of a sudden Eminem's rapping about him on his like Theo Von is an inspirational dude. You look at where he's been in this business and where he is today, and you're like, dude, fucking killing it.
It's mad. It's funny because one of my friends just, like, up until a few months ago, started talking about Theo Von. And it's the same with you, and it's the same with like Segura and all these other guys. Your friends just kind of start talking about them, and then you can feel them just getting more and more popular. It's kind of this, it feels like proper word of mouth, so it feels more genuine to use that word.
Theo's hilarious. He's hilarious. And I would argue that I was one of the first people to ever realize he was hilarious.
Really?
Me and Amy Schumer fucking were in love with him. He made us laugh so fucking hard. We did a TV show together.
His voice alone is hilarious.
Just him.
Yeah.
Just him. By the way, just him. He is so funny. Yeah, he's great. I love Theo.
So what's next? You're going over to New York now. Is it next week or after you finish? Is Dublin the last show?
Dublin's the last show of the European tour.
So what is it going to get crazy here now tonight and tomorrow night, or more crazy than usual?
I'm gonna probably pack this place out and let it just stay here tonight. It's like go do the show and then just tell everyone come out here and drink out here. Yeah, Dublin's gonna get fucking crazy. I have a entourage of like 7 people with me.
Really?
Oh yeah, because everyone found out I was coming to Dublin to finish the tour, and they're like, "Hey man, I'm gonna come over and come see your show." And I was like, "Oh, great. Were you I'm flying from Tampa?" And he's like, "Yeah, my brother's coming." I'm like, "Great." And then we have another comedian's like, "Hey man, I would love to just come and open for you." And I'm like, "I already have an opener, but yeah, come on over." So I rented a big house, and I have everyone staying in the house. My tour manager from the UK brought my suitcase over. She's staying with us. I have a cameraman. I got my opener. I've got a huge posse, and everyone's like ready to fucking party. That's why I told them I was doing this. They're like, "Shut up! I thought we were gonna start drinking." I was like, "Guys, I have to work. This is a job for me."
I appreciate it. I was looking at your Instagram stories and I was like, "Fuck, you had a crazy night last night," but obviously you can kick on with a hangover. I can't. I feel like I want to die.
You know what I love about Europe is the showers get hot as fuck, so you can sauna out your shower. I've been doing that every morning. Just I go in, I wake up, I turn it on, hot as shit, make a cup of coffee, right? Get a nice steamy. Then I come in, half-ass it. I've been doing this like 600-second workout too. I know you're like, really, Bert? I've been doing a 600-second workout. It's like 10 minutes, right? Bang that out, get a sweat build it up, coffee in there, sauna, just sweat your ass off, get in, get it like hot, rinse that sweat off, and then lay on your bed and just let the sweat pour off your body.
Just like 3rd-degree burns.
It's been the greatest. I've loved this trip. I deal with a hangover pretty good. I don't get hungover that easily. And by the way, when I do get hungover, it's like detox hungover. It's like the only ways I get hungover is like when you've been drinking for 2 days straight and your back hurt and your back hurts and your hand doesn't work right and you can't hold chopsticks.
You just got the shakes.
Yeah,
you got
and then
shakes.
You need a beer to like fucking calm it down. But no, I've been good. I've been really good on the flights too, because normally I drink on flights, but I've never had more than 3 beers on a flight on these trips. I know that seems like a lot for an hour flight, but normally I get blackout drunk.
So what about going on stage? Because some people won't touch booze if they're going to go on stage.
I don't like to drink before I go on stage. I mean, I can have a beer now and be fine, but I don't like to get to the club, have a drink. I like to get to the club, have a coffee, look at my set list. I can put in the work. And that sounds silly. People just think I just rip my shirt off and just ad-lib it. And if they think I'm ad-libbing it and they like it, then that's great. But yeah, I kind of like to be a little sober on stage.
I'm going to let you go because I know you got to do a sound check and stuff. One of the funniest things I saw was you and Segura doing the Hot Ones. That is hilarious. And you're talking about stuff appearing like it's off the cuff. That's obviously off the cuff.
Oh, entirely.
That is where media is going, right? It's going less into the talk show sphere where people go out and do their 7-minute interview and more into this kind of like YouTube shows. And for anybody that doesn't know that show, it's where a really skilled interviewer, that guy Sean
Evans.
Yeah, people like progressively hotter wings, and then he continues to interview you. It's a kind of a genius setup.
It's great.
But you and Segura rewatched the episode you guys did.
Truth or Dab.
Yeah, and you're super honest as well, which I loved. It was awesome.
Brutally honest. Well, Segura and I it was funny because I think we misunderstood the game. It was like you can either eat a wing or answer the question, and we were eating a wing and then answering the question. And Sean's like, "Hey, wait, you don't have to answer the question. You ate the wing." And I had fucked up, and I had told Tom that's how it worked. Tom looked at me and he goes, "We don't have to eat the fucking wing?" And I was like, "Oh no!" Yeah, that was a really, really funny. That was a funny day. Anytime I'm with Tommy, I mean, that's the crazy thing is like I know that people connect us as like comedians or like they're like two comedians who make fun of each other online. We're also best friends, and so like, just like the texts back and forth from him, just the two of us get on the phone. We went to San Francisco for a weekend. I don't think I've ever laughed harder in my entire fucking life, and we love gay shit. So like, being in San Francisco, two fat white guys, we saw a gay couple walking down the street, and one guy's in khakis with a tucked-in shirt. The other guy's in jean shorts, cowboy boots with a python around his neck, and they're holding hands.
An actual python?
Yeah, an actual python. And Segura looks at me and he goes, if we were gay, which one would you be? We laughed.
I'd be the snake.
I go, we both be the snake, asshole. I go, you think you're the khaki guy? And he goes, I'm definitely the khaki guy. I go, you're not the fucking khaki guy. I'm more khaki guy than you are. And he was like, oh no, you're definitely more snake. Oh, we laughed so fucking hard that whole trip. But yeah, I love those guys. I mean, I just texted with Tom, Joe, and Ari about this thing because we do Sober October every year. And Ari just came up with this idea. He goes, guys, I have an idea. We should do this one day. And then everyone's like, oh, we're in. And so then Ari's like, okay. Then Ari gets very regimented. I will text you as soon as I know when I'll be in LA, and then we will accomplish this. But yeah, those guys.
We're not great with a schedule unless we're on tourism.
The text messages I have with my friends are so funny. I remember being at a Rockies game, a Colorado Rockies game, and I texted them something. I was like, having a cold beer, you boys. And then Joe was like, Joe said something about, how long do you think you could quit drinking? And then I just go, name it. And then Tom goes, oh shit. And then Ari's like, guys, I'm just catching up to this. What are we talking about? And Joe's like, name it? And I go, name it. And he goes, 90 days. And I wrote back, easy peasy. And all I heard was easy peasy, question mark, easy peasy, question mark, easy peasy. And that's how we got into Sober October, is just a fucking funny text thread of us talking about my drinking and how long I could quit drinking. And then the best part, I mean, like, this is the best part of all of it, is we do the podcast, and it gets a little serious at points because I talk about how much I really drink, and Joe's concerned, and Tom is like, he goes, how many drinks do you have a night? And I go, like maybe 9. And Joe goes, you have 9 drinks a night? And Tom goes, Joe, they're doubles. And Joe's like, you have 8 drinks a night? So we decided to do Sober October, and Joe says, I'm not gonna do it. And we're like, what? This is before it starts. He goes, yeah, I'm not gonna quit smoking pot for a month. I'll quit drinking, but I'm not gonna quit smoking pot. And then Ari texts me and Tom privately. He goes, I'm planning an attack on Joe. I need your 100% commitment that you will help me pull this attack off. I need your comments ready to be posted. I'm posting on Instagram in 10 minutes. Please send me, this is what I'll be posting, send me your comments. We send the comments back, and we didn't like Tom's fucking bitch-ass comment. It's like, Joe's the most powerful man around, da, da, da. We're like, no, Tommy, that doesn't work. So we rewrite Tom's and send it to him, and we're like, this is what you're putting. And we said, Joe can't quit marijuana. He's one of our best friends. He plays this character of a strong, willful man. I need everyone in this time of need to pray for Joe. And so we each put hashtag pray for Joe. Post it, and then all of us are just sitting by our phones waiting for Joe. And then I hear, you motherfuckers. And it comes back, I'm in. Dude,
Rogan took that shit seriously as well, didn't he? Holy. Yeah.
Rogan takes everything seriously. Fucking dude, never challenge him in anything. It's the biggest mistake you could ever make.
Especially in anything remotely physical, because what was it you were using to gauge what you were doing when you were
Heart
fit?
rate monitors.
Heart rate monitor, yeah.
Joe almost killed himself. He almost shut down his kidneys. He was working out so hard. He set up the fire alarm in his house. He took
From the machine? From what? From the
everything. He's a fucking lunatic.
Sweat.
I'm the idiot that was taunting him online, going, Joe, you run 1 mile, I run 2. You run 10, I run 20. And Joe took it serious. He was like, okay. And so he did a podcast one time. I'm listening, because I love listening to Joe's podcast, and all I hear is, I'm going to fucking break Bert. And I went,
That's the last thing you want to hear from Joe Rogan.
The last thing you want to hear Joe Rogan say is on a podcast, I'm going to fucking break Bert.
Terrifying.
And we made it through Sober October. We got another one coming up.
You going to do it?
I have to. I don't even fucking option. I wish we could get out of it.
It's a while off yet. You might.
It's a fun month to have. It's a really fun month, and we all get together. We text more than we.
That was
it's
a great podcast. That podcast.
The podcasts are fun. We do a podcast before and after. We all kind of like convalesce, and we talk more that month than we ever talk. And by the end of the month, we're like, we all could use a break from each other because like we're just. I mean, it's obsessive. I mean. So yeah, I don't know what our challenge will be this year, but it'll be something fun, and you know.
Let's hope something physical again, and Rogan might kill himself.
Sure, it's something physical. I wish it was something emotional. Who could cry the most in a month? We could definitely do that.
Well, Bert, I really appreciate you came in early to do this, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. This has been a blast.
Great. Thanks a million.
All right, I'm going to go get drunk.